Good afternoon to all. It's my immense pleasure to welcome you all for the afternoon technical session. Let me introduce the person, honorable chairperson of this session, and we are delighted to have Dr. S. Angeline Shija as a chairperson today. She is the assistant professor, Department of English and Nesamani Memorial Christian College of Arts and Science, Matandam. We welcome you, ma'am. Without any delay, let's continue the paper presentation. Now I welcome Chandrasekhar S. Vaidya, Research Scholar, Department of English, Karnataka University, Dharwad, Karnataka, on the title Under the Shadow of Cold War, a note on George Orwell's Animal Farm and 1984. Sir, it's your time. Please share the
Good
stage.
afternoon. Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
My name is Chandrasekhar Vaidya. I am a research scholar in the Department of English, Karnataka University, Dharwad. Title of my paper is Under the Shadow of Cold War, a note on George Orwell's Animal Farm and 1984. As we all know, George Orwell is an important English writer who has produced various forms of literature and regarded as one of the greatest writers of the world. He worked in Burma as a police officer from 1922 to 1927, and he left the job to pursue writing as a career, which was his childhood desire. Orwell has written six novels, namely Burmese Days, A Clergyman's Daughter, Keep the Asbestos Flying, Coming Up for Air, Animal Farm, and 1984. Orwell participated in the Spanish Civil War. He worked as a war correspondent for the journal called Observer during World War II. All this made him to hate too much industrialization, intellectual snobbery, and capitalism. His novels can be divided into early phase novels and later phase novels. His later phase novels talk about war, industrialization, and other side effects of totalitarianism. As we all know, Cold War is a struggle between two superpower nations, the USA and the USSR. After the World War II, the United States and its allies and Soviet Union and its satellite states began a decades-long struggle for supremacy known as the Cold War. Soldiers of the Soviet Union and the United States did not battle directly uh, during the Cold War, but the two superpowers continually antagonized each other. Just a second, sorry. Each
Yes.
other. Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You can proceed. You can
Antagonized,
proceed.
yeah, antagonized each other through military coalition, propaganda, arms buildups, and economic aid. It started in 1947, soon after the World War II, and ended in 1991 with the dissolution of USSR. As a socialist, Orwell hated Russia because of its totalitarian approach. His participation in Spanish Civil War in 1936, his work as a war correspondent for Observer in the World War II made him a bleak man. Even the so-called socialism, with its many splinter groups, began to frustrate him. His participation in war wounded him both physically and psychologically. He hated war, capitalism, intellectual snobbery, too much industrialization, and people's lethargy. Having all these things in his mind, he wrote a satire called Animal Farm, in which he talked about animals who won the farm by their master called Mr. Jones and tried to maintain the farm and having desired of giving equal status to each and every animal, which did not happen, and the farm ended up in a state as bad as it was before. All this happened because of Napoleon's dictatorship. While explaining the events in animal form, Orwell brings the elements of Cold War, which was just begun at that time. If we read Animal Farm carefully, one can bring out how Orwell brought the concept of Cold War in a subtle manner. One can clearly say that there was Cold War between the two pigs called Napoleon and Snowball, between Jones and the farm animals, among the animals of the farm, and among the animal farm and the neighboring farms. Napoleon and Snowball are the two pigs, and they wanted to live the dream of old Major, who died after clearly explaining his dream of living equally. But Napoleon wanted to become the leader of the animals, so it played some intrigues and expelled Snowball, who was his strong competitor. There was a cold war between Mr. Jones, the farm owner, and the farm animals. We can say this because Mr. Jones never sits quiet throughout the novel. He does one or the other things to capture farm back from the animals. He makes new allies, visits all the nearby all the farms, and explains how animals have sent him out of his farm and maintaining the farm on their own. He does the same thing which USA and USSR did during the Cold War. There was a there was a cold war even among the animals of the farm because some animals used to work really hard. For example, boxer, and some never used to work much, like the cat. The cat did not work at all. She did take participation only in the Battle of Cowshed. We can see the Cold War between neighboring farms and Animal Farm. The neighboring farms, though maintained good relationship with Animal Farm, they were really not happy or cordial with the Animal Farm. They cheated Animal Farm in many deals. These are some of the instances which uh, we can get to say how the Cold War impacted Orwell and how he very subtly brought it out in his satirical novel Animal Farm. 1984 is Orwell's last novel. It was published in 1948 and set in 1984. The novel is considered as one of the finest dystopian novels. The plot is like this. In 1984, three blocks could exist at the end of the Cold War, namely Oceania, the English-speaking nations, Eurasia, the Russian leading, and Eastania, China, Japan, and India leading. England became airstrip one in Oceania. Big Brother ruled Oceania with his agent, O'Brien, ruled airstrip one with employees like Winston Smith, Julia, Syme, and others. The people were divided in inner party, the rulers, the outer party, the job holders, and the proles, the working class people. If Animal Farm satirized Stalin's Russia, 1984 satirized Franco's Spain, Stalin's Russia, Hitler's fascism, and even all kinds of dictatorships. Because Animal Farm ended in the hypothesis that all forms of governments, even socialist in nature, proved evil. The novel talks about the totalitarian government. In this novel, one can observe how Orwell portrayed Cold War if he reads it very carefully. In the novel, the Cold War is there within one's own personality because there is no space for personal life in Oceania, and the mass surveillance captures each and every moment of its citizens. There were so many big holdings saying, Big Brother is watching you. All these things made a person to have a constant fight within himself. The protagonist of the novel, Vincent Mr. Smith, maintains a personal diary. There was no permission to have diary and it is considered as a thought crime. The protagonist of the novel, Smith, has committed thought crime and he was tortured for doing this. And Smith had a constant war within himself before he got arrested. It shows
Hello. Hello.
yeah, hello,
Yeah,
hello,
it's not audible, sir. Not audible, sir. Now
ma'am,
you can
I can't
proceed.
hear you, ma'am.
It's not audible much,
Okay.
sir.
Should I present it once again, ma'am?
Not from the beginning. From
Okay,
one more.
ma'am.
From the last sentence, from the previous sentence you have blocked, right?
Okay. The present paper tries to throw light on how Orwell
Mm,
uh,
yes, yes.
how Orwell brought the concept of Cold War subtly in his later phase novels.
Okay. So this is your statement, is it not?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I'm not
Okay.
like
Mm.
you're not audible, ma'am.
So is this the final statement of you?
Yes,
Is
yes,
this a
ma'am.
conclusion of your article?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine then. Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Chandrasekhar of
Yes, ma'am.
Karnataka University.
Yes.
Mr. Chandrasekhar of Karnataka University, you have excellently presented your paper. And
Yes, ma'am.
this is
Thank you.
a new way of presenting Cold War and related with this Orwell's Animal Farm in 1984.
Yes. Yes,
And
ma'am.
you have accompanied everything which was present there in the novel of Orwell. And since he is a
Yes, ma'am.
political
Thank you.
writer, you have included the Cold
Yes.
War with it. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Good
Yes,
presentation.
ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
ma'am. Thank you so much.
Oh, okay. Shall we move to the next presenter?
Okay, ma'am.
Yes.
Thank you, sir, for your
Okay.
presentation. And next, I call upon A. Shaktivel, PhD Research Scholar, Department of History, Annamalai University, Annamalai Nagar, on the topic American Literature and Culture 1900 to 1960.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am,
Yes, good
is
afternoon.
audible?
Yeah, it's audible. Proceed, sir.
Uh, Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. This is A. Festival, PhD Research Scholar, Department of History, Annamalai University, Chidambaram. My research entitled is American Literature and Culture, 1000, 19,000 to 19,600. 60, sorry.
Okay. Yes, proceed, sir.
American literature. American literature is written in the United States and its colonies prior to the American Revolutionary War. The predominance of American literature was found in the East Coast regions of the present-day United States. Benjamin Franklin and Alexander Hamilton were notable political essayists during the literary revolution. Thomas Paine also became known as one of the major authors of Thomas Jefferson, American European Emancipation Ethics. The nation's first mint was published in the late 18th and early 19th century. In 1971, William Hill Rose, The Power of Sympathy was published. The novel is based on two siblings falling in love without knowing their relationship status. Many literary figures published their works with the aim of creating uniquely American literature and culture. Among them, Washington Irving and Edgar Allan Poe were the most important modern writers. Ralph Waldo Emerson coined the term transcendental, transcendental society in 1836. Inspired by this movement, Henry David Thoreau wrote Walton a book that is still celebrated in literature for its individualistic, naturalistic, and relativist motifs. Abolition was inspired by William Lloyd Garrison and Harriet Beecher Stowe's famous novel Uncle Tom's Cabin. Finally, I carry out
Finally, you carry out.
starting from 17th century literature, which was constructed by the reformed regionalists as acceptable and unacceptable to the 21st century writers who lived with the ideology of all is permitted. The waves caused by the writings of Americans are huge. American literature, which is many ways is the foundation of global ideologies, aesthetic and literary theories, seems to have no material or technique that has not been touched. The freedom of expression that underlies it is astonishing. American literature, with its themes of individualism, idealism, and nature's divinity, echoes racism, man-made disaster, genocide, the psyche of the immigrant, and the voice of the oppressed from Emerson, Whiteman, Thoreau to Henry James, Garcia Marquez Dandelillo, Sojourner Truth, Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, Scott Mamadei, Lawson, Inada, Joseph Styrone, Elie Wiesels. There are many modernist and postmodernist writes in the fields of novel, poetry, essays, plays. They practice religion freely. They lived in Massachusetts as Puritans who wished to reform the churches of England or establish another new church. In the later part of the 17th century, the northern and southern coast of the Atlantic were established as British colonies. Among the colonists, poet and essayists abandoned. The stories were banned because they were legends. The poet largely minor European writers and Broad Street, Benjamin Franklin, George Irving, Bryant. Legends were written in the late 18th century. Edgar Allan Poe's detective stories stand the test of time, even though his contemporary Nathaniel Hawthorne did not write poetry. His novel and short stories reflect the state of the American society at the time and have a unique identity in the literary world. American literature, with its theme of individualism, idealism, and the divinity of nature, echoes racism, man-made disaster, genocide, the immigrant site, and the voice of the oppressed throughout history. From Emerson Whiteman, Thoreau to Henry James, there are many modernists and postmodernist writers in the field of novel, poetry, essay, and drama, such as Garcia Marquez, Dandelio, Sojourner Truth, Toni Morrison, Alice Walker, Scott Mamadei, Lawson Inada, Joseph Styrone, Elie Wiesel. Starting from the 17th century, literature framed by the reformed religionists as acceptable and unacceptable to the 21st century writers who live with the ideology of all is permitted. The waves caused by the writings of Americans are huge. American literature, which is in many ways is the foundation of global ideologies, aesthetics, and literary theories, seems to have no material or techniques that has not been touched. The freedom of expression that underlies it is astonishing. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Very good, Mr. Shaktivel. So
Thank you, ma'am.
Shaktivel of Annamalai University has presented well. And from this paper, American Literature and Culture of 1900 to 1960,
Yes,
you
ma'am.
have incorporated many things, right? Like it is a vast area. Since it is a vast area, you have incorporated the genres, then the writers, then the movements of that period and the theories like individualism, evaluation, then ideologies, everything you have incorporated. And starting from abolition, slavery. Okay, it's very good. Presented well too, right? All the
Okay.
best. Now,
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
if you have any questions who are on the forum, can ask questions to Mr. Shaktivel. Anybody there? If not, we can move to the next person.
Okay, ma'am. Thanks. Thank you, sir, for your presentation. And next, I like to welcome B. Jayavashini, PhD Research Scholar, Sri Sarada College for Women, Salem. She is going to present the paper on the topic Unraveling the Chicken Soup, Analyzing De-Reflection and Paradoxical Intention in the Select Novels of Ellen Mary Wiseman.
Please, Ms. Jay Varshini can proceed now.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good
And good
afternoon.
afternoon, my fellow paper presenters. So today I will be presenting my paper on the title Unraveling the Chicken Soup, analyzing de-reflection and paradoxical intention in the select novels of Ellen Mary Wiseman. I'll start with a brief introduction about the author. Ellen Mary Wiseman is a contemporary American novelist whose works are all based on historical fictions, historical settings of the 20th century America. She has written 6 novels so far since her debut in 2012. So, in this paper, going on into the paper, we as human beings have experienced some kind of emotional turmoil every now and then. Say, for example, fear, guilt, grief, depression, anxiety, and so on. And these are all manageable when we know that there is a particular solution to the problem. But there are instances, there are problems where we will not have a particular solution, where the problem will not have a particular solution, or the solution will be invisible at that particular time. In such instances, it becomes an unending psychological torment for the person. This paper is an attempt to prove that such emotional imbalances can be cured using the techniques of de-reflection and paradoxical intention. So these techniques of de-reflection and paradoxical intention, they were introduced by the famous psychiatrist and existential psychologist Viktor Frankl. He uses these 2 techniques to cure his patients, his victims of emotional imbalances, and turns them into a positive outcome. In de-reflection, Frankl advises the people to transcend themselves towards a positive goal or activity. Say, for example, when an individual is in grief of losing a loved one, Frankl advises them to not hold on to their grief and to turn their turmoil towards a positive outcome. Say, for example, do something other than thinking about the same grief or thinking about their loved ones. To explain this topic, I have used Weisman's novel, The Orphan Collector. This novel is set in 1918 in Philadelphia. This is a period where the world was suffering in the outbreak of Spanish influenza. And Pia is the protagonist of the novel is Pia. She is a 13-year-old girl who loses her mother to the flu, and she becomes the sole responsible caretaker of her 2 baby children, her brothers. So she does not have time to grieve for her dead mother, and she now all of a sudden is responsible for taking care of 2 babies, and this puts her at an imbalance. So when she struggles to do this, she accidentally loses her baby brothers, and she ends up in an orphanage. Now, along with guilt, along with grief, she is also suffering from guilt of losing her brothers. She knows that it is her responsibility and she somehow lost them. So she lives with it, and she has all kinds of existential questions as of she does not know why she should live, and she failed in her existence. That is when she turns towards taking care of other babies. That is, she transcends herself into a positive activity by taking care of other children in the orphanage. So whenever she takes care of other children, she has a sense of comfort in her heart that her baby brothers will someday come to her. She does not know if they are alive or dead, but she has that comfort. It soothes her soul when she takes care of other brothers. So here she de-reflects herself. And the next technique that Frankl proposes is paradoxical intention. In this technique, he uses his victims to prove that when a person is suffering from fear or anxiety, they should fight it off. Uh, when we suffer from anxiety or fear or any other psychological torment, uh, we will not get out of that cycle unless and until we fight it off, unless and until we accept that there is a problem with us, and we fight it off. So that is what he tells in paradoxical intention. Frankl asks patients to fight off their fears, fight against their fears. To explain this, I have used Weisman's novel, The Lost Girls of Willowbrook, which was published recently in 2022. This is a story of Sage, a 16-year-old girl who thinks that her twin sister has died like 6 years ago. But all of a sudden, she receives news that her sister is actually alive and she was sent to a mental asylum and she is now missing from that asylum. So, all kinds of questions build in her. Ever since knowing that her sister has died, she is unable to come out of the grief, and she is brought up in a toxic environment with a toxic and abusive parenthood. So the abusive household and the grief she has, she tries to de-reflect these. She tries to fight off these by going on into an adventure. She goes on to the mental institution where her sister went missing to find her. But the officials in the asylum thinks that she is her sister, Sage is her sister, because they're identical sisters, and they mistake Sage to be her sister and they lock her up. Now she is in a situation where nobody believes her and she has to somehow get out of that place because it is a very cruel and inhumane place with inhumane practices by doctors. She has to get out of the place and she has to somehow find what happened to her sister. This is when she realizes that fighting against this is not going to help. So what she does, she tries to endure it all until she finds a solution. By enduring the suffering, she finds a sense of peace. They no longer torment her for fighting back, and with that peace that she gets, she tries to think of solutions to get away from that place. And eventually, by fighting against it, by distancing herself from her fears and anxiety, she gets out of the place and finds out what actually happened to her sister. So, by analyzing these two novels using the two techniques that I say, I am proposing that when a person does not know what to do when they are in when they are in a situation, when they have a problem and they do not have a particular solution in sight, they can use these two techniques of de-reflection and paradoxical intention to find a sense of comfort and soothe their mind until the actual problem gets to a solution. I conclude my paper with that, ma'am.
Okay. Well then, Ms. J. Varshini
Thank
belongs
you,
to
ma'am.
Salem, and
Yes, ma'am.
your paper is something unique, right? Unraveling the chicken soup. Actually, chicken soup stories we will read for pleasure, right? But you have
Yes, ma'am.
analyzed these two techniques is something very good. And you were telling something regarding the psychological issues like emotional turmoil, right? For that, you have
Yes, ma'am.
chosen de-reflection, and in that, you were telling something of
Paradoxical intention.
existentialism theory in that you have adopted. And again,
Yes, ma'am.
second one is paradoxical attention, right? Um, and
Yes, ma'am.
shall I ask one thing to you? Where you were telling in the second
Sure, ma'am.
one, tolerating the suffering, will that gives you comfort and a soothing atmosphere to you? So when we are comparing with
Not
that paradoxical
tolerating.
attention, yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
when
Say, for
before we are
example, when we
concluding with
are afraid about something or anxious
oh,
about something,
okay.
uh, we cannot think about the same thing again and again. Only
Mm,
if we
mm,
think about the thing that gives us anxiety, it will only
mm,
elevate the anxiety. It will not cure us. So here,
okay.
in paradoxical intention, he says that we should transcend ourselves beyond that fear. We should
Oh,
go beyond that fear, beyond that anxiety, and do whatever we have to do to get over it.
okay. Okay, anyway, it's good, and you have chosen new works. That is something fantastic in your part, and this paper is a need of the hour for us, right? Because people are in anxiety because of this corona and all. It's good,
Yes,
good
ma'am.
attempt.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms.
Thank you so much,
Devarshini.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Shall we move to the next presenter?
Okay, ma'am. Thank you for your presentation, ma'am. And next, I would call upon Dr. S. Ramya Niranjani, Assistant Professor of English, Sri Sarada College for Women, Salem, on the title Unraveling the Chicken Soup, Analyzing
Excuse
Deep.
me. Arati,
Yes,
Arati,
yes, ma'am.
Arati. The fourth presenter is Hansi Verghese,
Yes.
research scholar of Palakkad, Kerala.
Okay, ma'am.
Uh,
Sorry for
it
the.
is on mechanics of counter memory in Diana Glancy's Pushing the Bear. She will proceed. Hansi Verghese,
Okay, ma'am.
please.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon. Am I
Yeah,
audible now?
good afternoon. Yeah, it's
Am,
audible. Please proceed.
am I allowed to present my screen for the slides?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the people who are there will do it. So admin.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, it's visible. It's visible
Okay,
now. You can
thank you.
proceed.
So, hello everyone. I'm Hansi Verghese. I would like to present my paper titled Mechanics of Counter Memory in Diane Glancy's 1996 novel Pushing the Bear. So, counter memory as a term was first introduced by Michel Foucault in his 1978 essay Niche, Genealogy, and History. According to this, counter memories are memory practices or practices of memory formation that counter dominant or mainstream narrative. So, mainstream memory creates popular accounts of history, and counter memory practices are, in a way, dependent on this fixed, otherwise dominant, open quotes, regimes of truth, close quotes, because they bring us alternate memories or memories of the unvoiced, in other words, marginalized, to create or produce alternate histories that question the validity of popular records. Um, Diane Glancy's Pushing the Bear is an attempt to create such a detailed, alternate account of the historical Trail of Tears event, where the Cherokees were displaced from their homelands and forced to walk for months towards their land on the reservation. This paper would like to present two ways in which the novel tries to create or bring into discussion the alternate narratives that have largely been ignored or been made unavailable by the dominant narratives. One is through the historical documents like magazine articles, government letters, proclamations, journal entries, travelogues, etc. The other is through inscription of the memories of the trail into the oral tradition of the tribe itself. As we can see, the Cherokees were the first among the Native American tribes to adopt the use of language, written language. But it was just been introduced at the time of the removal and hadn't gained much support from the people who wished to stick to the ways of oral tradition. So there is a dearth of first-hand written accounts of the trail from the parts of the natives. But a very few documents were archived. These documents have been presented in the story at regular intervals, and they, in isolation, form an entire narrative of their own. So this is the first side of counter memory identified. First, we have a letter here, a letter from Reverend Bushyhead, who was actually the conductor of detachment number 3. He is also a character in the novel, and the other major characters in the novel belongs to this group led by Bushyhead. In this letter, which is also incorporated in the novel, he states that the rations are not enough and that trip cannot be made under such circumstances. He also cites the increase in amount of the sick and also asks for additional wagons for the elderly, and without these, he states that it's difficult to continue the journey. Just before that, we are provided with an account of expenses signed by Sir John Rose himself, who is the leader of the tribe, for expenses incurred to this same detachment number 3. This shows that there hadn't been any significant changes in the provisions allotted to them. This has to be read in conjunction with the proclamation of John Bull, commander of the removal of this tribe. Here we can see that he has promised the Cherokees who leave voluntarily for the reservation lands with hospitable treatment in all ways. So I'll read from his excerpt. He says, quote, "You'll be received in kindness by officers. You'll find food, clothing, and will in comfort be transported to your new homes." Close quotes. Although there are accounts of the deplorable state in which the Cherokees walked the Trail of Tears, not to mention the violence of the soldiers who forced them out of their homes and continue to force them to walk the trail without rest, the novel provides rare glimpses into the reality of the situation through archive documents. So the first one is of a white traveler from Maine who cites the detachment of poor Cherokee Indians. He says that he found them camped for the night in the forest by the roadside under heavy wind and rain. I read from his letter, his entry. Even aged females, apparently nearly ready to be dropped into the grave, were traveling with heavy burdens attached to their backs. Close quotes. And he states that he saw them burying at least 14 or 15 people at every stop they made. And then there is a government Teamsters journal which mentions the number of dead and buried and the issue of lack of space for the second cart. And he also mentions the attempts to rebel by the natives, which have been suppressed. This concludes that it was not a peaceful journey at all. And there is a physician's note, who the physician tended to the sick with measles, whooping cough, and other fevers. He states that there were several thousand Cherokees in the stockings, and there was only one physician to attend to them all. So, the second state of counter memory identified are in the stories. The stories of the tribe are retold with new additions at each step of the journey by several characters in the novel. One among them is the story of Uktena, told to Sergeant Villains by the people of this tribe. And Uktena is the honored serpent, and there are multiple stories about him. And they tell him the story of the battle between Uktena and Thunder. It's the story of a boy who helped Thunder defeat this serpent. The storyteller says that Thunder remembers the kind boy who helped him. The storyteller reminds the audience that Thunder is not so fierce. The purpose of the story is not hard to guess. It reinforces the tribe's close ties to nature and how these stories help nurture their faith in nature. Reading along with the conditions under which they were forced to travel, that is, under heavy rain and snowfall. We can also interpret this as the people reaffirming their faith in their beliefs and their determination to survive with their faith. And there is another story recited by Maritol, another character of this trail. That's the tale of the trickster turtle. In the original story, a single turtle outwits the deer to win the race. But in her story, the first turtle is still at the starting point, and there is a second turtle introduced at the finishing line. Together, they trick the deer into assuming that he has lost the race. The story of a second turtle replacing the original turtle and tricking the deer into losing the race is adapted to explain their current situation to the younger generation. The first turtle stands for the people who ran to hide in the forest of North Carolina hills, that's their original home, and the second turtle refers to them as a group who walked to the trail to the reservation lands. Maritol says the Cherokee Nation has become two in order to survive. A careful blending of the story with reality brings out the charm of storytelling. There is the truth of displacement in the story. There is also the will to survive. The deer stands for the encroachers who have underestimated the power of the natives. The story is a reminder and a source of strength to the latter. So the stories told by the natives in the trail incorporates elements of reality. Therefore, the stories contain their experiences, their memory, and their responses to the trails that they have undergone, and very well can also be seen as an account of their otherwise unrecorded journey. As we see from the part of natives in popular records regarding their experience of trail, there is only silence. What the author has tried to do is fill in the silence by presenting before us the gaps through the historical documents and the stories that are passed down through orature. As such, Pushing the Bear as a novel is a platform for memory to perform against the dominant narratives of silence in the Native American history of forced migration. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, this is a presentation of par excellence, Hansi Vergis, because you have kept all these things in a apple pie order. Um, because in your presentation you have divided it into two, and how the narratives are in with historical documents, and the next one, the stories of the tribe, of course, oral tradition, right? How the
I've
oral
al-
tradition is.
yes, ma'am. I've only given
Uh,
few
uh,
examples for both
uh, Sorry,
because of,
I didn't get you.
because of time constraints. I have only given few examples in both.
That's not a matter. This will do. And anyway, they got the inspiration to read more about this author.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
others will
Perfect.
also read it. No problem. And you also have presented some of the facts, like diaries. That's good. You have shown all those things. And anyway, overall, it's a good performance. Hansi work is good. If
Thank
there
you,
is
ma'am.
any question, you can ask. Anybody here? You can question now. If not, we can move to the last presenter of the session.
Hopefully, I'm audible.
Yeah, you are.
Okay. Okay, just give me a few seconds so that I can start with my presentation.
Okay, ma'am. Is this Miss Kamini Verma
Yes,
of
ma'am.
Punjab? Okay,
Yes,
okay.
ma'am.
Yeah. So now Kamini Verma of Punjab, GNA University, is going to present a paper on trauma experienced by trans woman protagonist in Meredith Russo's If I Was Your Girl.
Yes, good afternoon. A very warm good afternoon to the session chair, Dr. S. Angeline Cheater, coordinating team members and fellow delegates. I, Kamini Verma, a research scholar from GNA University, Fagwara, Punjab, is here to present my paper on trauma experienced by trans women protagonist in Meredith Russo's If I Was Your Girl. So before I start with the objective of this paper or something about this paper, I would like to share something about the Meredith Russo, the author of this paper. She's an American young adult author from Tennessee, and she is a transitioned lady who transitioned at the age of 27. She started her career in 2016 with her debut novel, If I Was Your Girl, which I have taken here for my presentation. And she got the Stonewall Book Award in 2017 for the same book, which is actually an award given to the exceptional merit related to the LGBT experience in English language books published in the US. So she has written so far two novels. One is If I Was Your Girl, and the second one is Birthday, and the rest of are the 5 short stories and essays. If I Was Your Girl is basically a story of Amanda. Amanda, who is the protagonist of this novel, she's a young girl who needs to make new friends, but she always remains with one conflict because she has a past which is later or sooner is always there in her life to interrupt her, because who she is and what she wants to be is the biggest question in her life, which brought certain traumatic experiences in her life. In order to stay safe in this society, she needs to keep her secret because the society consider her original identity as shameful one. So this inner clash is actually the core of this particular story. So I take up the thing transgender first. What is transgender? Whenever we talk of the word transgender in India, we usually consider it as hijras, kinners. We have this kind of feeling in our mind. But the transgenders are basically those who breaks the heteronormativity of the society, because they consider that the following a natural process is not a compulsion to them. So they are free from any kind of sexual orientation. They neither fall in the masculine category nor in the feminine category. And they are those who are considered as a cross-dressers, because a male can wear the female attire or the female can be dressed up in the male attire. So they are the non-cisgender. So cisgender is basically a terminology which we use for the people, those who follow the heteronormativity. So moving ahead with the trauma, which is a basic keyword in my title itself, trauma experienced by the protagonist. So the trauma word. So whenever we talk of trauma, these are the certain definitions which I have quoted here from the Cambridge Dictionary and from the Merriam-Webster Dictionary. But we can also say that the trauma is an emotional response. It is an emotional response to an event or the series of events, which are usually the quite distressing one, the frightening one, and the stressful one. Trauma is not only a thing which is causing any kind of physical pain to us. It can be defined as the mental anxiety, the mental stress also. So taking up the objective of this paper, so my objective of the papers are to reveal the traumatic experiences faced by my protagonist, that is Amanda, which I have told you earlier, because she had a past which she cannot share with anyone. So that brings a kind of tension, a stress in her mind, that she always remains stressful with this thing, whether she should disclose her identity to everyone or not. So the next objective of this paper is that her relationship to the body and her self to body and self to other always remain conflicting, because the people consider what she is from external as a female. She is a very gorgeous girl as presented by Meredith Russo in this, but to some extent she has those traits of male also in her, which she tries to overcome and wants to present herself as a pure female in this society. Whenever somebody is having any kind of mental anxiety, any kind of stressful thing, any kind of frightening things, or the distress in the mind, that leads to the suicide or suicidal tendency. Amanda, which was Andrew at the beginning of this novel, had this feeling itself, because Andrew feels that he is a boy, but he doesn't have those characteristics in him. So he wanted to change his gender, and that was the situation when he thought of finishing his life. So that anxiety is the main cause for these kind of tendencies in the transgender characters. Moving ahead with the thing that the transgenders always remain prey to the violence, they always remain prey to the sexual abuse and the sexual assault, because the people consider them as a material to be used for the sexual gratification. Because being a transition person, they consider they are meant for this purpose only. Further, another issue which my protagonist faced in this is that the social unacceptance. She wanted to mingle with the society, she wanted to be with everyone, but her social unacceptance generates isolation in her, and this isolation further leads to the trust issues in her, because she feels difficult to trust anyone in this particular world. So for the analysis purpose, I have just quoted the material, the content from the original work, but I'll be telling. So the quote 1, if you read this quote 1, it tells us that she has a secret with her, which she wants to share with everyone, because that secret is piling up her mind and she was getting stressful just because of that particular secret of her. So getting stressful is actually generating the traumatic situation for the protagonist. If we read the quotation number 2 tells us about that the conflict between the character and the harsh environment around her. The people were aware here. In the last line, it is said that I remember how certain teachers knew what was happening and how they did nothing. So this shows that the environment around the people like her is quite difficult. She was assaulted in the school by her fellow students. So the quotation number 3 is again telling us that she wanted to get rid of her past, but she knows that it is quite difficult for her to get escape from the shadows of her past. Further, in the next page, as in this quotation number 1, the quotation number 1 over here, she was aware that if she get close to someone, as I have mentioned a name, getting close to Grant. Grant was a boy for whom she had some sort of inclination. She wanted to get closer to him, but she knows that thing. If closeness means knowing more about each other, and if the Grant will be able to know about her past, he may not be able to accept her. So the last quotation, I don't think God, I will tell something that is a kind of moral stress on her. She considered that if she continue as a boy, then she'll be in a wrong world. So transition was something which is must for her. So these all quotations are actually explaining the stress, the trauma which has been generated to her. The anxiety issues in her mind are piling up just because of the past she has. And she wanted to get rid of that past of her, but it is difficult. Throughout the novel, there was only her mother who was supporting her, who helped her to get transition. But even her father was not ready to accept her transition. And she became the reason of divorce between her father and mother. So at the end, I would like to say this thing, that she experienced all these anxiety disorders due to her past, that she was a boy at the beginning. What I feel like, the coming out of these kind of problems is the only solution to fight with them. And when we talk of the genetic disorder acceptance, and if the people around us will support, it will be something which will be helpful for the transition people in the society. So what I feel like, that if we talk about this trauma experience of my protagonist, this is just because of the thing, because she was hiding a past and the society around her was not ready to accept what she was going through. So to help these people, listening to them, supporting them is the only solution. As in our general society, if we talk of the thing, we consider hijras, we consider the kinners, we consider the third genders are the category which is not socially accepted by us. Even in India, the government has made the category male, female, and third gender. But in general, whenever we get chance to interact with them, we always look at them with a person belongs to a lower category. So this is something which is the core of my paper. So this is all from my side. Thank you very much.
Okay, it's a fantabulous presentation, Ms. Kamini Verma. And we all have witnessed that you're a person who voice out for the transgender, that you empathize with them. That's a good sign of being you a human being, right? And the thing is, mm, your objectives, um, good objectives. You have the trauma, how their relationship from self to body, and the anxiety, then how they were a prey to violence, and and again how society did not accept them as human beings, right? All these things you have said. But then you are telling something about, in conclusion, how they want to come out of it, right? Uh, we could find that society is not accepting them. When society is not accepting them, how could they come out of that turmoil which is in their mind? Um, they will definitely think of their past, is it not?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, the thing over here is required. The first ever thing is required is the support of the family for this thing. If
Yeah.
somebody has this kind of genetic disorder, because in India, this is something that whenever a child is having some sort of genetic disorder for this thing, the people usually consider that they usually pressurize the child to be in that particular gender in which the person has born. So society, here comes the role of the family first. The family, actually, we being the family members join together make the society. So it's the role of the
Yeah.
family first that they should accept them. If the family will accept them, then definitely the rest of the society has to accept them. Because when the family is not ready to accept, that become the biggest challenge. As in the case of Amanda, her mother was ready to, but her father was not ready. That's why she became the reason for the divorce of her parents. So this is something required that the family or the society has to take initiative, that we should accept them as a normal human being instead of calling them as third gender only. If somebody has transition, accept that person as female. If somebody has transition as male, accept the person as male. Why we always call them as third gender at that time if the person has gone through the transition? Because we are not ready to take the challenges against the heteronormativity. We are still the
Yeah.
follower of that thing. We consider the heterosexuality is the only right way, but the
Right.
homosexuals have their own wishes. They should live the way they want to.
Yeah. Okay. It's fine. So, so you are here to voice out for the transgenders is a good sign, right? Good presentation. And as we are moving to the end of the session, and I'm so
Okay, sir.
happy that being the part of uh, this session from 2 to 3. And here, all the papers are unique in its own. First, we got a political theme, and the next one we could learn something about American literature and culture. And next paper on psychological issues, and the fourth paper is on how memory, how counter memory carried out from generation after generation, and how it goes on. And the final article is on trauma of transgenders. So everything made a um, remarkable thing in our mind, and all the best for everyone present here. So I put an end here. Thank you.